and then there was sound. Good evening, good evening, good evening. These are all the cues for everyone. And also a greeting for you. All right. Good evening. My name is Shashina Bray. I'm the Director of Programs and Partnerships at Me Too International. And I want to welcome you to what will be... Oh, excuse me. I did get a title change. Let me reintroduce myself. Good evening. My name is Shashina Bray. I'm the Senior Director of Programs and Partnerships at Me Too International. Thank you. Oh, y'all are wonderful. And I want to welcome you to our PSA premiere of the Barbershop, as well as our panel conversation. We're going to do a number of things this evening, but we really want to continue a conversation that we started in June. We premiered our first PSA called The Rules around the adultification of Black girls, and we're here this evening to continue that conversation and really hone in on the experience of Black boys and sexual assault. And so we invite you to be a part of this conversation, not only through your participation, but also through your listening, right? Also through the energy that you provide in this space. We believe that we're going to have, I don't want to say a good time. We're going to have a much needed time, right? And that might show up differently in our bodies, all right? So I'm going to say I'm going to wrap up the things that I'm saying. I'm going to bring up the founder of Me Too, Tarana, Burke, and Danny Ayers very shortly. Then we'll show the PSA, and then we'll move into our panel conversation. We have an amazing panel who will be joining us, many of whom you know, and I'll let our moderator, Vision, introduce everyone very shortly. But just a few housekeeping things. The bathrooms are out these doors and to the left. There's no food or drink in this space. We will have refreshments available at the end of our program. We welcome you to please stick around to the end so that you can enjoy that with us. I'm going to ask you to please silence your phones and other devices. This is a small space, so we will be able to hear you, okay? I'm also going to ask you to take care of yourself. Whenever we hold space, we always have community norms, and that is our first community norm, which is to take care of yourself. Right? So that might mean you need to close your eyes at some point. That might mean you need to get up and walk out. That might mean you want to connect with our healing support specialist, Natty, who's located here. We have a private space also available if you just want to check in, or you just want to just kind of be silent and not talk for a moment. So please take care of yourself. I'm also going to ask that you honor this container. There are lots of different conversations to be had as it pertains to sexual violence, as it pertains to the Black community. But this evening, for these purposes, we're honing in on what do we owe Black children. We're honing in on the experiences of Black boys and men. And I'm also going to ask you to lead with curiosity, right? You might hear something this evening that surprises you. You might hear something that you do not agree with, and that is okay. And so we're going to ask that you hold curiosity before maybe jumping into judgment or critique, right? Why might that person have that stance? Why might that person believe what they believe? How does that sound for you all? Good? You think you can do that? Thumbs up? We do so many virtual programs, like thumbs up is like so second nature, but I guess we don't really do that much in real life, all right? So I'm going to step aside, and I want to welcome up Tarana Burke and Danny Ayers. Tarana Burke, the founder and creator of Me Too International, and Danny Ayers, our CEO.
Yeah, we can share. We can share.
We can share.
We share a whole organization. We're really excited to be here. And Tarana and I don't get a chance to stand together very often. So it's really nice when we get to do something in person with people. A lot of our work is digital in nature. We call it digital direct service. Yeah. So it's nice when we can be with people in community. I'm CEO as Danny Ayers. Tarana is our Chief Vision Officer.
We made that up.
Yes, we did. Because when you found something, you can create things. You can make things up as you go. We're really looking forward to this conversation. This has been a really long time coming. We've been thinking about how we can talk about Black boys in particular inside of the experience of sexual violence, inside of the work that we're doing to interrupt and end sexual violence. And this conversation is, we couldn't be happier with the people that we have participating in this conversation. So we won't stand up here for too long, but maybe just say a couple of things for folks before we bring the panel up.
Yeah, I think that most people recognize this as a a woman's issue, an issue for women and girls. And I think I've been having this conversation for a long time, particularly with some of the men that you're going to see here on stage tonight. Some of them are, our friends and colleagues. And this has been really important. This is really important for us because there's a big misconception about our work. Most people see this as a women's movement, and we've been saying for a really long time that this is a survivors movement. And we believe very strongly that we cannot solve the issue of sexual violence if we don't embrace men first as survivors, not as perpetrators, not as people who cause harm, but as survivors. And this conversation is a really important first step for people to understand that. And particularly, this is as you see in our mission statement, we are grounded in Black feminist principles. We are a Black organization, and this is a Black conversation. What's happening in our community is happening to Black children, and we don't often have that conversation. So we really thought it was important. As we've seen, many of us, the conversation that is happening around Black children, particularly Black boys, is really detrimental. It's really flippant, the way we talk about sexual violence in our community with Black boys in particular. And so we thought it was important to ground this conversation the way we have. And you'll see in the PSA. And so we're really sort of excited to be able to have this conversation and spark this conversation. And I think people don't think about the Me Too movement from this perspective. So we're just really excited to have it, and we're excited to have it in community this way. And we think it's no better way to do it, and to do it with our friends. So without further ado, I'm gonna turn it back over to Shashina. So before I say too much. Thank y'all, and thank y'all for coming out.
Thank you. Oh, wonderful. Okay. So also in good Me Too fashion, we're going to spend a few moments grounding, okay? So anyone who's unfamiliar with this is an intentional opportunity just to bring presence to the body and bring presence to yourself in the space. I'm sure many of us did many things before we got here. And so this is an invitation to land here, arrive here. And I also want to leave you with a tool, right? We understand that this conversation may be activating. We understand that this conversation may create discomfort in the body. We understand this conversation may create excitement, right? We're having the conversation. Whatever that is, as I said, we want you to take care of yourself. So I want to leave you with a tool in order to do that. And so I'm going to offer some invitations. Everything is an invitation. Take what feels good to you. Leave behind anything that does not. And so my first invitation is just to bring awareness to your seat. Right? Notice how you're seated. Perhaps find a little bit more length in your spine, right? Maybe notice where your feet are on the floor, or maybe they don't hit the floor. That's cool too. All right. Notice some colors in the room, some sights, some sounds. Arrive here, right? We'll be together for about an hour and a half, okay? And I also want to invite you to start to bring some awareness to the breath. Just notice your natural pace of breathing. Not going to ask you to do anything fancy yet, all right? Just notice your natural rhythm of breathing in and breathing out. And if you're open to it, we're going to connect our breath with a little bit of movement, a little bit of tensing of the muscles. This is called progressive muscle relaxation. And it's a very simple tool, right? So what we do, we breathe in, we tense the muscle group, we hold it, notice the tension, and then we use our exhale to let it go and release the tension. And one of the things I love about this, nobody knows what you're doing. So if you're moving through the conversation, you feel some discomfort, you may want to come to that place and find that tension. And so we'll do a little bit of practice together so you know what that feels like. All right? On your next inhale, I want you to bring awareness to your legs. And as you breathe in again, go ahead and squeeze the muscles of your legs, squeeze your feet, hold the tension, notice what it feels like. And on your exhale, let it go. Good job. Maybe bring awareness now to your shoulders and your arms. And on your next inhale, go ahead and squeeze your arms, hold them close to your body. Notice the tension, and use your exhales to soften and let it go. All right. And now bringing awareness to your hands. Go ahead and make a fist without hurting yourself. Squeeze that fist, hold the tension, notice what it feels like in your body. And on your next exhale, go ahead and let it go. Release your fist. Soften. Soften. Okay. And so I invite you to continue to use this as a tool as we move through our time this evening, or any other tools that you may find accessible. Again, we do have a healing support specialist here and available. If you just want to check in with somebody, we have some private space for that, or if you just have some space for decompression. Okay? I'm going to invite the people near the door to come in and have a seat, please. And then we are going to show our PSA. We created this PSA. Marc, you can have a seat here. We created this PSA last year in conjunction with Versus TV. It was a really beautiful experience to bring life and animation to these topic areas. And so what we're going to see is a conversation in a barbershop looking at a very unique but far too prevalent experience of Black boys being sexually assaulted by older women, and this being normalized as a rite of passage. And what we all know and understand in this space, it is not. And so I welcome you to the barbershop, and we'll move right into our conversation. Excuse me.
Y'all see this? This kid don't know what he's talking about. Messing it up for all the young dudes trying to get some.
Listen, what up? These boys out here getting touched before they know their own bodies. And we just out here acting like that's normal.
Bro, there are just some things that we don't even need to know. They're just understood. My first time was with my babysitter. It was weird and confusing and all, but also made me feel like it was something I was supposed to be doing. I ain't think nothing of it.
That's because when it's an older woman and a boy, he gets overlooked and accepted as a rite of passage. But let it be Uncle Tony or some dude on the block, all hell would break loose. Dude is right. It's sexual abuse.
Whoa, pause, hold up. It's not that deep. Y'all need to stop being so sensitive around here. I don't know, man. What you think, young boy?
I don't... You leave this young man alone. He's been coming in here since he was a baby. Shoot, look at him. He's still a baby.
Well, no one asked me, but I think it's good that we have conversations like this with each other, because this definitely is happening, and we don't have enough opportunities to talk about it.
Yo, you good? I'm gonna send you a text. Don't judge, just check it out. We've been watching, we've been listening. Black men need safe spaces. Black men are survivors too. We see you.
Hold up. It's not that deep. Y'all need to stop being so sensitive around here. I don't know, man. What you think, young boy?
I don't... You leave this young man alone. He's been coming in here since he was a baby. Shoot, look at him. He's still a baby.
Well, no one asked me, but I think it's good that we have conversations like this with each other, because this definitely is happening, and we don't have enough opportunities to talk about it.
Yo, you good? I'm gonna send you a text. Don't judge, just check it out. We've been watching, we've been listening. Black men need safe spaces. Black men are survivors too. We see you.
Hello? There we go. You know when you're used to projecting, you don't think you need a mic, but we do. So I would like to bring up our moderator. Perry Vision Divirgilio is a North Philadelphia native. Shout out to the Philly folk in the room. Writer, poet, and producer. Vision focuses his talents on unpacking race, racism, mental health, hypermasculinity, and many manifestations of interpersonal violence. In 2020, while the world was in a state of pandemic, Vision got introspective and started writing about these experiences through the lens of his own inappropriate, albeit funny, escapades, and Trasterpiece Theater was born. Currently being developed as an animated series, Trasterpiece Theater was an Audience Award winner at the American Black Film Festival, Comedy Festival, and was commissioned to show at the Black Star Film Festival, another Philly staple. Now, with over 100 videos and millions of views, Trasterpiece Theater remains an honest and hilarious unbecoming of age story that continues to grow and praise the deconstruction of the fuckboy. Let's welcome up Vision.
Hey, hi. Here we. Huh? Yes, that was the trash one that was saying that, was one of the trash boys on there saying like it don't even matter, you do whatever you want. Yeah, we don't really believe in that. Welcome. We tense, and we're tense. Let's not be tense. This is a conversation, and I get it. It's a deep conversation, but let's not be tense about this because that's why we don't have the conversation. So the more we can loosen up, we can start talking about this more. Cool? Yes? Yes. All right, cool. I'm going to introduce our panelists. And I got to build with some of these brothers, and I felt really fulfilled the other day having this conversation with some of them. So, starting off, Yolo Akili Robinson, he, him, his, as it says on here. Y'all gotta loosen up. Like I can't host like this. Y'all gotta loosen up, man. Is a non-binary award-winning writer, healing justice practitioner, yogi, and founder and executive director of Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective. A visionary leader in men's health and social justice, Robinson has dedicated his career to building ecosystems of care that center Black and marginalized communities across the U.S. Under his leadership, BEAM has become a national force in transforming mental health care. Robinson's leadership and advocacy have been recognized nationally and globally. He is a Ford fellow. He is a Ford Global Fellow. Y'all can woo-woo that? If you hear something you like, all right, let me step from behind here real quick. If you hear something you like, you're allowed to cheer, you're allowed to snap, you can say yes if that's what moves you, whatever you feel in your spirit, you can do that. All right, cool? Cool, all right. There we go. Thank you. Trying my best. We're going to do this. We're going to get this right. Robinson's leadership and advocacy has been recognized nationally and globally. He is a Ford Global Fellow and a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Health Equity Award winner. Boom. Honors that reflect his impact in reshaping conversations around mental health, equity, and justice. Give it up for Yolo, y'all. He's coming up. Marc Lamont Hill, Dr. Marc Lamont Hill is one of the, had to do the doctor on this to be shady, bro. I really did. Dr. Marc Lamont Hill is one of the leading intellectual voices in the country. He is currently the host of BT News, The Griot, Al Jazeera Up Front, and the Coffee and Books podcast. That's what they say on here. That's what. But it say that. I'm gonna keep it. That's fine. They ain't need to know that. Hill is an award-winning journalist and professor. Since his days as a youth in North Philadelphia, Dr. Hill has been a social justice activist and organizer. He has worked on campaigns to end the death penalty, abolish prisons, and has released numerous political prisoners. Dr. Hill has also worked in solidarity with human rights movements around the world. He is the founder and the director of the People's Education Center in Philadelphia, as well as the owner of Uncle Bobby's Coffee and Books in Uptown Philadelphia. Give it up for Marc Lamont Hill. Kendis Gibson is a 4-time National Emmy Award-winning journalist and the author of the award-winning book, 5 Trips, which chronicles his life from poverty to prosperous television network career and how psychedelic and plant medicine helped him cope with the myriad of issues, including childhood abuse. Sorry, we had to talk about that. All right, cool. Oh, say less. Say less. My bad, y'all won. Over his decades-long career, Gibson has covered some of the biggest stories impacting our world. He was near ground zero following the terrorist attacks on 9/11, escaping the area minutes before the first tower fell. He worked for prominent networks including ABC, MSNBC, and CNN. Gibson was born in Belize. Everybody give it up, y'all, for Kendis Gibson. And last and certainly not least, Van Lathan Jr. is a Baton Rouge, Louisiana native and a prominent media personality and host known for his work on TMZ Live. His former podcast, The Red Pill, and his current podcast, Higher Learning, co-hosted with Rachel Lindsay. He's also an executive producer for the Oscar-winning short film Two Distant Strangers and the author of Fat, Crazy, and Tired, Tales from the Trenches of Transformation. Lathan is recognized for his insightful interviews, commentary on sports, entertainment, and news, and his ability to engage in provocative discussions on social and cultural issues. Van Lathan. Y'all get in there, y'all get in there, y'all get in there. So first of all, welcome. Shout out to the PSA, that joint was tough. As we already stated, we are gathered today to premiere the Barbershop and discuss a concerning trend that is often overlooked. In fact, narratives about young men and boys having sexual encounters with older women have been praised as a rite of passage. I know our panelists would agree with me that that's far from a rite of passage. Oh, my bad. Right. But before we do that, a little, I guess, housekeeping. The core assumptions. All black men, masculine women, and masculine folks are valuable and worthy of support, love, and care. Do we all agree? Yes. All black men and masculine folks have learned and can unlearn harmful behaviors. Do we all agree? Yes. Black men and masculine folks' mental health suffers because of how we are taught to suppress emotions and relate to women and femininity. Yes. Together in community, behavior change is possible. We are responsible for behavior change and addressing violence. Yes. Yeah, yay. Yes. And if you are not in alignment with that, we love you. And we hope that you get home safely. But this ain't the space for this. We're in the space of community, and we're in the space of growing and healing right now. So with no further ado, let's get this panel popping. Each of you has a public-facing persona that brings you into many different types of conversations. Can you share a little bit about yourself and why you said yes to being a part of this particular conversation? We can start with Yolo.
This is on? Perfect. Well, first I want to start with giving gratitude for the work that's made this moment possible. I want to give gratitude to Me Too, an organization led by black women, led by women who made this possible for this conversation. Can we give a round of applause for that and recognize that? And I also just want to name, I'm always like, what the land we on. We are in the space of the Apollo. We are in legendary space, right? And so it means something significant for us to be in partnership and in this space, considering the history and the legacy of resistance, of artistic brilliance that has existed in this space, right? So I want to hold that and name that too. To answer your question about why did I choose to come to this, I come to this space as a survivor, right? And I also come to this space as a person who's been holding for the last 20 plus years spaces for black men and boys to heal, creating spaces for black men and boys to heal. And I've seen the ramifications of this discourse show up in real time, in real space, right? Whether it has been through the defensiveness that I think we can kind of see in that PSA, where brothers are like, no, I'm not, that wasn't this, and which can sometimes have a lot of layers to it. Defending against something that may be more difficult to hold. And so the need to push back rather than face the pain. I've also held space for brothers who have come to a point in later in their life, like in their 40s and 50s, and come to recognize experiences they had where they were assaulted by an adult woman and being able to recognize the patterns of how that shows up and throughout their life that they had never dealt with. And I've also, unfortunately, had to also support communities of where, particularly, I would say, I want to name when black boys who are living with autism, who are disabled, have been assaulted, right? And trying to support communities with supporting their wellness, right? And so I see this issue every day. I see it in the community spaces. And I also know that with not only there's a need for us to heal and transform the ways in which we relate to masculinity, some of the concepts we've got, but also to challenge and be very clear that, like, no adult should be having sex with a child, period, right? And that I also understand the myriad of masculinity and masculine trauma that sometimes resists that narrative. And so for me, it's very real. I see it in myself, but I also see it in the brothers that I've had the privilege of being able to support as they go through the healing process.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to see everybody here, and it's good to be a part of this conversation. I'm honored to be here. Anything that Tarana asked me to do, I would do, but this wasn't even this was something that I do with great gratitude for the opportunity. As you say, gratitude, really, that word really resonated with me. I entered this space thinking a lot about the various places and ways that I show up in the world. I think the first way is as someone who has grown up in and lived in communities where these issues were not talked about with care and compassion for Black men and boys. Growing up knowing Black men and boys, being friends with Black men and boys who experience various levels of sexual abuse, sexual assault, etc., and not having a language to talk about it, not having a space to talk about it, not having mechanisms, not having people like you to help them heal. I think about what it meant to be part of movements as an activist and also as a believer at times in organizations where sexual assault was happening. And although I was too young to be held responsible as a kind of whistleblower, we were all kids, I still carry a kind of guilt knowing and thinking about all of my friends and comrades who were harmed. And I'm not, and I'm finally at a space in my life where I feel like justice for them needs to look a certain way, and for me that means me being more vocal about these types of issues. And then finally, I work in the media. I work on podcasts, and some of them don't always deal with masculinity, issues of sexuality, sexual identity, in ways that are always healthy and healing. And so I feel the need to push back, both in private and in public, to those things.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. It is, I echo what these guys have already said. It is an honor to be here. When I got an email saying, would you like to be on this panel? It was like, yes, of course. Tell me where. I'll make it happen. What brought me to this particular spot and space in life and here? I wrote about my childhood sexual abuse, my childhood trauma, my racial trauma, a whole lot of trauma that I've experienced over the course of decades in my life. It is only within the last couple of years that I've come to grips with knowing and talking about the sexual abuse that I suffered at the hands of one of my brothers when I was 6 years old. It happened after my 6th birthday. I remembered it. We were in Belize in poverty, and it went on for a course of a year. I didn't talk about it. I thought it was just something normal. There was something weird that took place afterwards. Once my brother found a girlfriend, I was kind of jealous. And it took me until last year, in talking with somebody about it, to hear that that is a normal thing when you're a victim of abuse. I just wanted to talk about it publicly because we don't talk about it enough in the Black community. And since I've opened up about it and used my voice as an anchor at Pix 11 and through writing the book as well, I've learned so many of my friends who are like, oh yeah, like in camp, you know, one of my counselors touched me and we never talked about it. I learned last year, so I didn't name my brother in my book, and I gave a preview to my family members, and one of my nieces said, "You didn't need to name my sperm donor. I know that it was him. He abused me until I was 13. He abused my sister until she was in her 20s, and he abused my young brother when he was a kid." And there was a little bit of guilt, not being the whistleblower, that kind of overtook me at that point, but it kind of just fueled me to talk more about it and to normalize it, because by us not talking about it, everybody feels as if we're suffering in silence, and we really are. And it's been part of the healing process for me to speak out about it. So thank you guys again for allowing us to be here to talk about this stuff.
Check.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'm here because of a conversation I had with my father in 1994. I was using a post hole digger, which I'm sure you guys don't know what that is, but in the country we have to do things with our hands. And out of nowhere he goes, I'm not going to say exactly what he said because I just saw the beautiful black children that walked in the room, but he basically goes, "Yo, have you had sex yet?" I'm like, I'm probably 13 or 14 years old, and I go, "No." And he goes, "All right now." He's like, "You a Lathan man. Like, we're good looking, we're tall. You get to 16, you ain't had none yet. That you're a little different. Don't let your uncles know that." And that fundamentally changed me, because when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so the women that were in my community were no longer people. They were ways for me to access my manhood and become a part of the birthright of the rest of my family. And when I took that idea and started talking to my friends, I started to realize that a lot of them were relieved to have been abused. They were relieved. They were relieved to have had sexual encounters with older women when they were kids, because that meant that they were a man. They just got there faster. Mm-hmm. And so the longer I grew up and I would hear homies, like really, really close friends, goes, "Yeah, man, happened with me." They would say it. Y'all know the posture of peacocking, right? You ask me when you last year, "Yeah, man, for me it happened like 8. And this girlfriend of my mama's, man, it's just, I don't know, for me, maybe I came across like I was a little older. Maybe I was already a man. I already had, she couldn't." And they're bragging. Never forget, one time so we're in our 30s, like, "You realize that's wrong, right?" And then the answer becomes this: how could it be wrong when it's what I'm supposed to be doing and it's what I've been doing? And then I thought about the horror movies that I watch, and the most tragic characters in them are the characters that don't know that they're not safe. And like everybody else, we screaming at the theater, we going, "Hey, move, get out the way," but they doing something else. They don't know that they're not safe. Freddie coming from, Jason coming from, he be moving real slow. I don't see how you get nobody. But they coming from, and they don't know that they're not safe. And that's a profound thing, to not know that you are not safe, to not know the trauma that you have, and then to take that trauma and generationally propagate it, or to process it in a way that's not healing or whole for you. And like everything else in the world that's dangerous, at a certain point, somebody has to say no. So I'm here to help say no.
I want to say thank y'all for being here, number one. That's important. And also, the vulnerability and transparency of this conversation ain't easy. So thank you for being here for that purpose, if for nothing else. In the PSA, we saw different responses to the news of a celebrity admitting that they had lost their virginity to their babysitter. We know this is happening in real life. We've seen rappers YG, A$AP Ferg, and many others talk about their experiences of sexual assault, even though lots of times they don't name it that way. Most times they don't name it that way. Can you all further elaborate on some of the current conversations about black boys, sexual violence, and safety? What conversations have you been a part of, and what have you overheard?
I can say from a media perspective, even when I think about the way these stories are covered, it's problematic. But it's not just the way stories are covered, it's if stories are covered. A lot of times we spend our energy talking about the way a thing is talked about, but not covering something or not mentioning something, it gives as much of a lesson about what matters as the way we cover it. And so, for example, when boys in general, when we get stories in the newsroom and we're sitting in the newsroom pitching stories, I can say from my time at Huffington Post up until now, we're far less likely to cover a story of a boy being sexually assaulted by a woman, or specifically a teacher or a babysitter, right? And when we do tell those stories, the scripts are often written with like a comedic undertone or an irony. And sometimes I've been in newsrooms where hosts have wanted to say "lucky guy" or these other things that we talk about because, to Van's point, it's what we're supposed to be doing. And if you're a 13-year-old boy and you quote unquote have sex with your babysitter, or you have sex with your English teacher, it's seen as you somehow got a pass into this world as opposed to having been sexually assaulted. And because in the media sphere we talk about it in that way, we tend to normalize that idea or reinforce that idea that's already been normalized. And similarly, when I see these rapper stories, and it's not just rappers, but the rapper stories are the ones that are prominent, where I took my son and made him have sex with a sex worker, or I paid for my son to get this done to him when he was 12 or 13. We hear these stories multiple times, often from the same handful of rappers, but the idea that you would even be comfortable saying that out loud says everything about the context in which we operate. We have very dangerous ideas about what black masculinity is, what black manhood is, what black boyhood is, and how masculinity is bound up in hypersexuality. And as long as that's the norm, then it's not shocking that the media talks about it in this way. And when the media talking about it in this way just creates a cycle where we start to move that way again. And so we have to intervene and stop there.
Yeah. I think what happens behind the scene is a reflection of what we cover and how we cover some of these stories. I've been in many, many newsrooms when you will have a story of a school teacher in her 30s, and she's beautiful, and she's abusing a 13-year-old, and one of the 13-year-old's friends ratted him out, and the reaction in the newsroom has been like, man, with friends like that, like, who needs enemies? Right. Because the woman, by our societal culture norms, is beautiful, and nobody thinks about this 13-year-old who's lost his innocence as a result of that. And we covered then those stories with a different prism in our writing.
As you were talking, I think that one of the pieces that I very rarely hear us talk about enough when it comes to black men and boys is the over-sexualization of black men and black boys particularly, right? And how early it begins. Like I think about in conversations in community, as soon as he started walking, he got 5 or 6 girlfriends. I'm like, why does he have 5 or 6 girlfriends? And there was no idea that if she was a little girl, you were like, she got 5 or 6 boyfriends. Nobody ever says that, right? But there's an early push that is rooted in a history of the ways in which we ourselves have been taught that black men, black boys are hypersexual beings, right? And that gets pushed onto children very early and normalized. And so much, and I love that you lifted up black masculinity, because what I experience when I talk to teenage boys, it's like they're uncomfortable, right? There's the anxiousness of I want to have sex with girls, but I'm anxious and I'm uncomfortable around you, right? There's that natural kind of piece there. But also, because masculinity in the current dominant framework requires and pushes so many black men and boys to emotionally sever themselves, to repress and deny their feelings, to admit. So all of that just goes in that category, right? And so I just allow these things, quote unquote, to happen because I was taught essentially that masculinity is self-betrayal. That masculinity means I do self-betray my emotions. I self-betray when it doesn't feel good, and this woman, this whoever does something good to me, because I've been taught that being a sexual being is how I achieve masculinity, regardless of what I'm feeling, because my feelings don't matter. We see that intersection where these kind of discourses jump up, right? And I say one thing that's really important too when you were talking about the conversations in hip hop and people making the choice, say I'm going to pay for my son to have sex with a sex worker. I have yet, in my 20 plus years of this work, I have yet to find a person, but I would say black men specifically, who engage in that behavior, who themselves are not survivors. Because a part of what I have seen is that to normalize it, the externalization of the normalization is because it started here. I had to normalize it in here first, right? And so then I'm carrying that forward as a coping strategy, as a way for me to manage it. And it's not to say that there are not people who are survivors who have also embodied that. But I have quite frequently, I have come across folks, I can't think of anyone I've come across who has not been like, this happened to me, when you get to the root of it. And I think that's an important piece for us to hold. Because we haven't paid, in my opinion, as a community, a lot of attention to the sexual harm against black boys. It makes you wonder, in this broader context of white supremacy and racialization, what is not being held and how is that harm showing up? And like I was saying earlier, it shows up, I'm telling you, talking to men who are in their 50s and being like, wait a minute, what happened to me, right? And I didn't even think about that connection to like how I'm showing up with my wife or my partner now. And so I think that once again, we have to have these conversations with black men and like start thinking about our relation of sexuality in general. Like, what was I pushed into believing? What feels good for my being? How do I learn to not self-betray when we are all encouraged to self-betray to perform masculinity? And how that is disastrous to our mental health and our healing and for our communities.
Wow, insanely well said. Another part of it for me is the fact that since I was 6 years old, I had a group of older black men teaching me how to be invincible, teaching me how to be a callous. The world's going to be hard. We in the South, we black men. Things were going to be hard. People were going to treat me in a certain way. I was big. So I would walk into a room and my dad would be like, bring all of that with you. My mother would be like, just make sure that you make space for everyone. So there was this push-pull of me trying to understand how to just be a person. And then what happens with that is that you start to equate being a victim of anything with weakness inherently. Like if something happened to you rather than you happening to it, you are behind the 8 ball. Like everybody's teaching you what to do in a fight. Everybody's teaching you how to make it so that my dad would always say to me, he would be like, if somebody picked you to mess with, then you doing something wrong. Right? So figure out why they looked at all the people in the room and they was like, that's the guy I could mess with. So then people mess with you or things happen, and rather than be embarrassed enough to go, I survived that, and I'm so appreciative of Me Too for using the term survivor, you don't want to talk about it at all. Even if it felt wrong, even if it felt bad, even if it felt terrible, you don't want to talk about it at all because you're living in a society where your strength is defined by how much trauma you can take. So a lot of times you get brothers to a position where they have things that they want to say, they have experiences they want to talk about, but they just don't want to feel like they're weak in front of you. They can't quite trust you. They don't know if you're going to be the next one to try them. They don't know if they're going to walk out somewhere and be looked at as a victim or as something soft. And the power of being a survivor and the power of processing what you've gone through and then passing on your healing to somebody else isn't seen as something that's priority. So the more conversations we can have about the fact that, what happened was not okay, but you are okay, it just pushes us further to being able to have really full, comprehensive men in the society. And I believe in that, man. I believe in Jason Wilson. I believe in all of the brothers out there that are allowing these young men to cry. Like, my bad, man. I'm off my lecture pro, I apologize. And so I believe in the ability to, like, I just believe in these young men being able to like not have to hide from themselves. My bad, man.
No apologies necessary.
No apologies, man. None.
There was something that Yolo brought up that made me think at this point that there's a bit of a sexualization that takes place from many parents. Now, hear me out. And I didn't realize it until this very moment. I have two wonderful, beautiful, professional, one's on TV in a famous show, one's a executive C-suite banker friends who, different conversations over the years, have walked in on their sons and have said in public, one was at a cookout, a network cookout, and another was at another party, talked about how big their son's equipment was. One was 13, one was 15 at the time. And it wasn't until that moment that we were talking about it, I'm like, we laughed about it at the moment, but that you're sexualizing your son at that point. They were discussing as a proud mama moment, but it really is an odd thing that I think takes place beyond those conversations that I've had with people.
Absolutely. I think it's a lot more common, and I think that than we think. And I think one of the things that I have been so angry about in Black political discourse, and I think the U.S. historian, you might feel what I'm going to, is that, you know, we are so adept and aware of the history of Black men and the narratives that have been put on Black men's sexuality, right? And the framing, the white supremacist framing, all these pieces. And yet we hold that and have never, in my opinion, adequately held what was that trauma like for Black men to have that, to live with that, to live with those narratives, to live with that, like that animalization, for lack of a better word, right, of our sexualities for so long. What is the psychological, emotional cost of that when you are dehumanized? Because so much of what you're talking about, Van, what we're talking about here when we talk about masculinity and healing is like we're trying to, white supremacy has taught people who are Black men that we can only have this corner as our true expression of our humanity, right? That it's only to be tough, to be hard, right? That comes out of white supremacy, and it's also a coping strategy that our families have used, right? To survive insurmountable circumstances. But a part of what has to happen is, like this piece when you say about crying, is about how do we give back and expand the range of what it means to be a man and what it means to be masculine, so the crying is not weak. Like, you know, the crying is a part of the process. That I'm not responsible for someone's behavior that it did to me outside of my consent, right? That the work is to reimagine masculinity and make it broader, because a part of what rigid patriarchal masculinity has done to us is it has stripped us of our humanity. We can't cry. People are defending against a pain, right? We talked about that. I keep going back to that because I know you see a lot of these conversations too. Well, I'm like, why they're defending so strongly against, no, it's not assault, it's not assault, it's not assault. And underneath that often, in my experience, is I can't hold that. I don't have the intrapsychic capacity to hold that was what happened. Because now I got to hold all these things that have happened to me, right?
Yeah, wow. A term that, and this ties into our next question, but a term that Marc said that I don't remember hearing much, if ever, and it ties into also with Van was saying, is Black boyhood. How often do we hear those two words together? It's always young men. And that's why the narratives around when Black boys die is Tamir Rice was a young man instead of a Black boy. And that ties back into what you were saying earlier, Van, about, you 15, 16, it's time to be a man. And oftentimes that comes sexually. They ain't talking about paying bills. they ain't talking about being pillars of the community in those ways. They're talking about having sex. So that word stuck out to me throughout all of your responses. Like I don't ever remember hearing that word often growing up, black boyhood.
Oh, no.
I agree. I think part of the dehumanizing aspect of white supremacy is to deny black children childhood. I think that historically, when we think about childhood, it has signified certain things in our kind of collective imagination. Innocence, safety, play, imagination. And if we were to get more concrete, like not having to work, freedom. And when you think about what it means to be a black child in this country, or anywhere in the white supremacist world, you're constantly getting denied those things. From the beginning of this peculiar institution of slavery, black children are often forced to labor. When you think about notions of play and imagination, often that is the first thing that's stripped of us, right? Even the language of boy, like you said, the young man, or we say, look, that's my little man. Yeah. What's his nickname? It's man. There's a way that developmentally we see them as short adults rather than actual children. And it plays out around the world, whether it's in genocides and bombings, where young people don't have the benefit of childhood or safety. It happens here. I mean, when you think about Tamir Rice, just to give you an example, when Tamir Rice was killed, part of it is that the irrationality of white supremacy made it such that you couldn't even see this 12-year-old boy as a 12-year-old boy. They thought that he was, I believe, 20. And studies show that black boys are seen as older and more guilty than their white counterparts by law enforcement. So he's playing. The police officers took a moment, pulled up, shot him. Didn't hold a guard, didn't post, didn't do anything to figure out. He immediately saw him and shot him. He's playing with a toy gun. I don't support toy guns. Just as a general rule in this country, I don't think we need more guns. But lots of kids play with toy guns. Lots of kids play with cap guns. Lots of kids do that. Back in the day, we did this, There's no space for that kind of imaginative play for black boys, with or without guns. You ain't gotta have a gun. You could have Arizona iced tea, right? And some Skittles. It's the same thing. There's a way that our bodies are read is another thing. And so the innocence that comes with that, and the innocence that's stripped from that, extends into the sexual realm as well. Where they're seen as short adults, so they're seen as hyper-masculine, they're seen as perpetual. And this happens to black girls, too. I mean, I think, it's a whole other story for another. But I as someone who has black daughters and now has a 3-year-old black son, I'm sort of seeing it play out differently, but in some ways the same way. Whereas there's a sexualization there, and there's a sense that you can't be sexually assaulted, you can't be sexually harmed because you always want it. You always are ready for sex because, like Man was talking about, because that's what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah.
The adultification part of it is really profound because man, these people was doing their best. They were doing their best, man. My daddy would be like, everyone, all right, okay, like, what you gonna do if somebody come in here to hurt your mama? And he didn't make that up. They're like, we lived in a place where somebody could come in the house and hurt my mama. When we was out home in Maryland, it was a hole in the middle of Big Papa Place in case the Klan came. And it really didn't matter what age you were when they came. You had to fight or you had to die. So all of this becomes like, boyhood is like what you do in your spare time. Like you learn how to do all of the things that make you a contributor to whatever community you're in. You learn how to till the ground, use the post hole digger. You learn how to shoot. You learn how to hunt. You learn how to do all of these things that are rites of passage for a young man. And then when you by yourself, you play with your comic books. And then they even tell you, okay, put that away. Let me show you what the real world is about. And they trying their best. They're not in any way trying to tell you anything other than what they feel like has worked for them. And a part of all of that is being an expert in burying your shame. And so like it's a reactionary way of rearing something that you know is in danger. So when a man or a young man can't properly put in context his feelings, it's because he's never had to think about them before. He's only had to think about the things that make him valuable or worthy to the surrounding men around him. So the hard part is to change that set of values. The hard part is to change what makes you comprehensive. Because another part of this is that this abuse and these secrets and this shame is, we give this back to our progeny, and then we give it back to our community. When what we really want to do is talk about it and hold each other and support each other, but we want to feel safe doing it. And that's still the thing when we're talking about particularly young men who are abused in this way, that I come to spaces like this to get the answers to. How I can just get them to confide in me. Man, I don't want to get them in trouble. But one of my little young bucks one time, it came to me and showed me something that he had in his phone. And it was him with some little girl that went to school with him. And I remember looking at him, I was like, I don't know why. I don't know. I was like, take a step back. I'm like, what made you think that you could show that to me? Like, what made you think that I'm going to look at that and be like, oh, damn, you the man? Like, what made you think that you was going to show that to me and I was going to say anything other than, I'm going to talk to your father about that? And not in a way to get you in trouble, but we need to talk about the responsibility that you're having for yourself, how you're respecting your body and how you're respecting hers. So what am I doing? Am I taking myself serious enough? Am I taking you seriously enough? Am I taking this relationship with you as an older dude seriously enough? Because and sometimes I don't have those answers for myself, because I still have to relate to them and still have to be able to like mold them and give them the space. But I don't ever want to feel like I'm lording over them and not giving them the opportunity to talk to me about things that might be going on with them.
You know, as you were saying that piece, you said what made him think that he could share that picture with you, right? And I want to hold that in a structural, societal container, right? And when I say that, I want to say that, like, you know, kind of what I think both Marc and everyone's alluded to in this panel is that so much of what black boys are taught is that to achieve manhood, you have to dominate women, you know, for heterosexual men, dominate women. And there's an idea that if I show you I'm dominating women, if I show you I'm having sex with women, then I will be validated by you, that I will be affirmed by you, because this is how I get to masculinity. If we teaching man from 3 years old that he needs to have 6 girlfriends, and that man becomes the child who comes to you and is like, look, you right, you know what I mean? And that becomes normalized in the culture. I think that is very normalized in the culture for, as we know from some of these dominant conversations in many facets, right? Another piece that I want to hold to that I just always think is so important is holding the grace and holding the context of the people who raised us. And I say we can hold grace and context and also accountability, right? There's a way to say, hey, Dad, some of the choices you made, some of the behaviors you showed up with, the ideas you presented, I don't rock with, this had this impact. But also understanding the container in which they existed, how little resources. I know my parents were teenagers growing up in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, in the hood. They didn't have a lot of resources and tools and support. So what they got inherited from their folks who had even less contribute to the broader context of why some of these things that got handed down were so really rooted in survival, rooted in repression, rooted in, you know, the survival strategies they knew. And it's not an excuse, but it is context to understand. And I think that's so important as we hold that and bring it back to them and say, hey, this made me feel this way, but I also want to I know this was a different time, but I want you to know that I'm trying to do something different. that I'm trying to create a new pattern, because just as we inherited patterns, we get to make new patterns. And what we're doing here today is we're making new patterns and new strategies, and you're modeling, all of you, like how other young boys and men can see that there's a different way.
I think it's important that, like Van, you saying, you having that moment, like, what energy was I giving out that made you think that was okay? That's a really strong moment to have, like, of self-reflection. But that ties back into what you were saying, Yolo. I think there's something, having that moment of transparency and self, and just a quick excavation of how did I show up is important. I think that's what we all of us need to be doing that in a lot of things in life. And I think that kind of ties into the next question about tradition. And for better or worse, tradition plays a significant role in the perpetuation of rape culture. And rape culture is defined as, forgive me, y'all, it's getting heavy for me. Some things are coming up that I'm thinking like, damn, some things I never thought about. And thank you for that. Rape culture is defined as a set of deeply entrenched societal attitudes and beliefs that normalize sexual violence. It is demonstrated through media, language, and policy promoting sexual objectification and coercion, lack of agency over one's body, and dismissal of feminine presenting or gender non-conforming individuals as not fully human. Rape culture is ubiquitous in representing violence as sexy, alluring, and hot. These ideas pervade everything from magazines we read, the movies we watch, the music we love, to the language we use to talk about sex, and the laws that govern bodies and behavior. Rape culture relies on other systems of oppression to perpetuate victim blaming and gender inequity, including hegemonic masculinity and patriarchy. For this reason, the idea of change or ending rape and rape culture is a foregone conclusion for some. How do we actively push against the narrative? What can be done within our families, institutions, and the media?
Small question.
Yeah, I know.
That's all? I think we could solve Gaza easier.
Say it again. And I realize that's a heavy, that's such a broad thing. So anything within that question that you feel like that is either spoke to you or you feel like you want to then rock out?
I'm going to say this, and it's going to be difficult for some people to hold, but I had a conversation with Dr. Evan Auguste, who's a psychologist and a colleague, and we were talking about how we have to start looking at how rape culture is showing up against black men in different ways that have been normalized, right? And we were talking about specifically an individual who gave me permission to share a part of his story about him and his wife at the time, and how there was this push that he wasn't sexual, he didn't feel sexual, or he couldn't show up sexually, couldn't get an erection, and the push and the pressure to do that, and also the shame that was put on him about that. And also and then the narratives that was created once that relationship ended about which because a lot of times we don't talk about this, quite frankly, but black men are taught to be living, quote unquote, just erect penises. And and men will come to me and be like, I'm having trouble showing up sexually and I should be able to. And then we talk a little bit more and I'm like, well, wait, you're having challenges with your girlfriend. There's some emotional challenges going on in the relationship. Yeah, but I still should be able to get up but you don't trust her right now. You all have unspoken things. But black men have been taught to believe that we are supposed to be always sexual performers. And so there's this culture that often shames black men for not sexually performing. And they often sometimes, in my opinion, it looks like sexual assault. For straight men sometimes, for gay men sometimes as well. Like when you're being pushed to have an erection and you don't want to have sex, but you feel that push to do that, these are conversations that I think that there's a lot of shame around in our community, right? Because the shame is like, I couldn't get it up, something's wrong with me. And not holding that, like there are men who've come to me and said, like, I've felt that emotional violence and shame from women, and I don't know how to name that. I don't know how to say that this is how I felt, and how she created that for me, because that would make me less than a man. And so I think when we talk about rape culture, we have to hold it in the broader context of sexism and all these other pieces, but we also have to get nuanced. Well, how is rape culture showing up against black men and boys.
Yeah, I think we, and that's a great point, and even that distinction, because something is wrong. It's just not with me in that case, right? Like there's emotional trauma that's happening, and
but I'm a human. I'm a human who has feelings, right? I'm literally telling him like, you're a human who has feelings. If your body and your spirit don't feel it, why would you expect yourself to do it? Because I'm supposed to be all the things we just talked about.
And that word should become so violent in that context, because it becomes a referendum on me as a human, and my worth, as opposed to all these things that put me in that space. I was thinking about, partly because I do a lot of anti-prison work, I was thinking about the prison as one of the most normalized spaces of sexual violence. We know how much sexual violence occurs. Well, maybe we don't. We may not actually even think about how much sexual assault happens inside of prisons, right? And it's not just the sort of the type of sexual assault that we could probably imagine and understand as such. It's also coercive relationships, people who enter relationships for safety, for other factors that aren't necessarily their own agency. They don't want to be doing this. They don't feel like they have a choice but to do this. And we often don't talk about those types of relationships. We also normalize sexual violence. I mean, you can watch, at least growing up, and now it's a little different, but not much. You could watch a PG-13 movie. They ain't gonna cuss. They're not gonna show any sexual scenes. But you absolutely could see someone sentenced to jail and someone says, "Don't drop the soap." And that was so, when I first was hearing that at 6, 7, 8, I don't even think I knew what it meant. But it was just ingrained in me as something I don't know. I don't understand prison all the way, but I know something happened there that I don't want to happen. But the conversation wasn't, how do we stop this thing from happening inside of prisons? It was like it was just accepted, don't go to prison. But there is no crime in this country, legally, nor should there be any crime in this world, any act of harm in this world, morally or ethically, where the punishment for it is sexual assault. And yet we've accepted this reality as a society, that if you go to prison, that just might happen to you. And that becomes a very dangerous thing. And one last piece of it, which I think is also problematic, is the misgendering of trans folk in the context of prison, where we will take black trans women who are already highly criminalized, highly subjected to sexual violence, misgender them, place them in men's prisons, because we're still reading their body as masculine, as weak men, right? And therefore eligible again for whatever happens to them because they don't perform hegemonic masculinity. And while again they are not men, the state often reads them that way, and so, or chooses to read them that way, and for that reason they end up becoming victims of sexual violence and sexual assault. That again becomes part of lore. How many rap videos we heard about, this person who back in the 90s, it wasn't really about trans identity, but it was just about sort of queer men. But in the same way, anybody who we saw as, you're supposed to be a dude, but you're not acting like a dude, whatever happens to you, your name is just Twan, right? Think about West Coast rap. Like, whatever happens to you just happens to you. And we accepted that. And to me, rape culture, that's a significant part of rape culture, and there's so little outrage about it, partly because we don't think about it.
And I think that some of it is we also, I think, thinking about black, queer, and gay men's communities, there's an assumption, like you said earlier, that like all men want it all the time. I've done groups with black gay men, and literally, when we bring up the conversation about rape, they're like, well, men always want sex, so how could somebody be raped? That has been said explicitly. And so, once again, we're rubbing up against the same concept that, once again, is like holding this rigidity in this rape culture. And also, I think it would be remiss if we didn't name the experiences of black trans men, right?
Absolutely.
And sexual assault, and like once again, the ways in which they experience their gendered violence. And so I think that like there's all those things have to be held. I want to name them.
I've heard many people say you can't rape the willing as a joke. We've normalized it. Society in general, has normalized it in the media. If you think back to Oz, which normalized, rape culture in the prison, in rap songs. There was a popular song when I was growing up. I didn't even know what it meant when the song was "Rape Me." 9 Inch Nails, "I Want to Fuck You Like an Animal." There was a popular French movie that translates to "Rape Me, Baisse-moi," in which the victim fell in love with her rapist still. So Hollywood and culture and society has really normalized it. And it's important for us to try to turn the narrative, like that PSA, spreading the word of that PSA. There was a viral video that I wanted to put on our newscast, but we couldn't get the rights for it, but it's a whole other story, that went viral this week with a teacher. I believe she was in Africa. Did you guys see that video? Where she went viral by teaching her kids a song saying to protect your parts. We need to amplify things like that as much as we can to kind of change the narrative.
And there's so much healing work to be done, just briefly to say that, to reclaim our bodies and the ongoing work, right? When I say because we're talking about, in healing work, recognizing that being a black person in this country, we are taught to have a relationship with our body that's often disparate, that's disconnected, that's disembodied. And black men particularly, right? When we do simple activities like the feelings wheel in our sessions, and I'm like, brother, what do you feel in your body and where? It's like, I don't know what that means, right? And that's a real experience because the depth of the disconnection is there, and it's encouraged by the culture, but we also live under that. So a part of it is like, how do we reconnect with our bodies? How do we reclaim like our bodies as sites of of pleasure, of not just as like producers and performers, but as sites of places where we live that like have feelings and sensations. And I think that for a lot of us, not just black men, but we're talking about black men and boys, that is what black men and boys are alienated from.
Yeah, the reason why there's like a reference for me in almost every single conversation point that we're having. When my homie Graham, who went to Berkeley liberal, when he first said the term rape culture to me, I fought him for like 6 months. There's no way that I wanted to believe that was a thing. He had to be like wildin', right? It's like we talk about, we go to the Bayou Classic, girl walk by you, what's up, Red? What's up with that? You know what I mean? Like you're not, like there's such a cultural acceptance of some of these things that are that like I could not believe that the person that I was or the group of men that I really looked up to were capable of being a part of something that really needs to be examined. So like I took it as not I took the existence of the term as an attack on me personally. And it took a long time, like, for me to be like, all right, cool, let's have a real conversation about, like, what kind of men we want to be and how we want to show up and whether or not we want the people that are around us to feel protected and whole and, like, what that means and what the responsibility of that is. Because the bar is so low for what it takes to be a good nigga where I'm from. Don't beat your girl up. See your kid every now and again. Everything else, you're good. Right? You know what I mean? So, like, the fact that my responsibility was more or greater or maybe even aspirational in a way to really kind of examine some of these things felt like an attack. Felt like he was attacking me. So having cultural conversations around how we unshackle each other is spending so much time fighting for freedom from somebody else. Spending so much time fighting for freedom, for freedom of environment to eat, from persecution. Boy, fighting for freedom from each other is a different set of circumstances, and I really haven't figured out like how to do it, like how to really talk about these things in a way that doesn't make people feel persecuted when you're trying to help them. But I'll say that, like, the more normalized the conversation gets, the more people feel like they have the opportunity to talk. When you hear people, you hear things that they don't like certain things. They do have feelings of inadequacy. Real talk, when I was on the yard at Southern, a homeboy of mine, to your point, had been with this girl. And she gave him what's called a BDR. If y'all don't know what that is, it's a bad dick report. It's a funny term. You can laugh. All right. And I remember talking to him and him being like, I know y'all having fun with this, but like I'm on campus and people is looking at me, bro. Like he's like, I know that y'all having fun with this, but like I'm on campus and people is looking at me and he goes, I don't know if y'all know, but Jason died. Jason was murdered, man. And like we had lost a friend. He was like, I wasn't thinking about, he was like, what I'm supposed to say? I'm supposed to go to you and tell you that like I'm feeling all of these things and I just don't feel good right now. I just don't feel good. He's like, I wanted her, but I just don't feel good. And I was like, damn. And then I cracked some jokes. Because don't really know how to get through it, don't know how to like respond to him as a person. So I think about all of these examples, and he would never remember that now, but I remembered it, of just people, black men being thought of as less than people, about what they can do, about how they can perform. And then you think about them as young boys, and when do they just get to express who they are, and what they want? And be able to like ask questions about that.
And how many of us have ever thought about the BDR as a form of sexual assault and disrespect? Like, you know, I mean, look, thinking about that for a moment, right? You're going around saying that, like, you know, talking about someone's sexual prowess, power, with lack of, whatever, and how that could feel psychologically for the person.
You know what the thing is about it when I think about it, though, is I thought it was fair because the women on campus were so powerless. Like, I thought it was fair. They get drugged through the mud, you know? That's how I looked at it. Like, they get drugged through the mud. They get, the sexual choices they make get litigated in front of everyone, and they're vulnerable. They have, and nobody. So I thought maybe that's how I looked at it.
And I think the piece that we have to think about is, like, there's always this broader context of misogyny and sexism we need to always be cognizant of, right? But I think what I hear sometimes when I hear that argument is that, like, this makes it acceptable. Word. Like, you know what I mean? So it makes it acceptable that we can talk about this brother's body in this way, that we can do this, and that's okay because patriarchy. But I'm like, well, isn't because patriarchy the reason you're talking about this brother's body in this kind of way?
Maybe.
So maybe, but particularly when it's in the context of, and I think it's particularly when it's in the context of, how do I say this? When it's been using because I've seen it, you've been used to dehumanize.
Yes.
I want to make that distinction.
I think I know this isn't the main point, this BDR thing. But I think the context does shape sort of the why of the BDR matters. Because part of rape culture sometimes is the kind of dehumanization of the partner, right? And the objectification of that other person, such that you're not having sex with somebody, you're just using their body to masturbate, right? So if that becomes the thing, and the BDR, because if you have enough sex, you're gonna sling some mid, right? You're gonna have some nights that just don't work, right? Work out for you. Sometimes that's a dehumanization. Sometimes it's a reflection of a rape culture where we, as a matter of practice, aren't invested in anyone else's pleasure, anyone else's pain, anyone else's experience. And so that body that's there is being objectified. And so in my experience, not my experience, in my
Thank you.
research of campus interactions, and there's a great book on it that I'm actually thinking about called Sexual Citizens by Seamus Khan. That's actually what I mean. Some of the experiences that people have, both women but also men in same-sex interactions, are talking about the fact that they were just treated like an object there. And so I just want to complicate that. Sometimes these BDRs aren't just it's too small, it's too short, it was too fast. All the stuff that happens that is in some ways objectifying and dehumanizing, but or might be connected to another thing that we should think about too.
That's an important. The BDR is complicated and nuanced, right? In this instance, as you were sharing, though, I want to lift up that you're naming that, like, he was talking about the death of a friend.
Yes.
I'm not emotionally present in being able to be here, right? And there's a way in which, once again, black men still perform. Black men still get it up. That we have to, like, challenge in the context of patriarchy, because if we're talking about gender and patriarchy and sexism and misogyny, we have to hold the ways in which sometimes black women can show up in patriarchy. and have those ideas about black men's bodies and have those things, right? We have to hold that in the broader context, right? But we have to also name that shows up. Because a lot of times when I'm working with black men, a biggest part of my work with black men and boys has been getting black men and boys to own their anger at black women without the misogyny and the sexism and the transphobia. I'm like, I need you to get to own, like, yes, mom made some mistakes and mom showed up and I hear all those things. I want to help you hold that without the deep misogyny and the hatred and stuff towards all women, right? And most men can't make that distinction, right? And that becomes the problem in the healing process, in my opinion, because it just becomes replicated like it's all women as opposed to like, this woman hurt me. Now I need to move through that and not take that and make that about all women. You know, so I think there's a piece in there too I want to hold as well.
And I think, number one, I think that's we're seeing a broader BDR playing out in pop culture right now with the apps, with the viral.
The
T apps and the she app and T on it. We're kind of seeing that play out right now on a broader scale. And for those who don't know, good that you don't know. But yeah,
can I say something real quick? You know what else is a part of this? Is like being able to, one of the most valuable things in the last, I'm 45, so this is going to sound like my development has been arrested, but it has been, is in the last 10, 15 years, it's going to sound so stupid, but being able to confide in women, being able to like, I have a question and about something and I don't know how I'm supposed to talk about it, and I'll just hit Tarana and be like, yo, is this consent? Is this okay? And then when she gives that answer, it gives me power because I'll be like, look, man, my friend Tarana Burke told me this. So I don't know what you trying to tell me. I got the best minds in the world on my side. But being able to go to women, brilliant women that I know and ask about their experiences and talk to them about their experiences and invest into them without feeling like I have to have dominance in that situation is liberating. It's liberating because when you do that, man, you get such an understanding about how much you don't know how you are seen and showing up for people. And so I think sometimes, man, like in these situations, we're having these conversations amongst ourselves, and I want better tools for us, but I also want to involve our sisters in these conversations as well, because I feel like it's invaluable information that you get.
And I want to be able to include some folks in the crowd in the conversation as well, so we have a little bit of time for Q&A. Who's going to... So if you have a question, just line up at the microphone.
You have a question for our tech people, we can get this off stage very nice. You want to come up? Anyone else? You can have seats in the front here. We welcome questions, tech folks, actual questions.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's working. Hello. There we go. And I just want to again remind you of our community norms. Okay, I know we all are feeling very passionate right now. And we also want to honor time, and that we want to make sure we can get to as many voices as possible. And that's for the panelists, too.
No pressure. Hi. First of all, just thank you for having this conversation. It's so special and very vulnerable. I fundamentally believe that the types of shifts we're talking about happen at a systemic level and at a community level, as do all shifts that have to occur in terms of racial and social justice issues. But what I'm hearing from you guys that's really special is an opportunity with the next generation, also on an individual level and at a familial level, and with starting with things in the home in terms of not perpetuating generational cycles, things that were said either consciously or unconsciously by your fathers or by other people's fathers. How do you think, when we talk about systemic change, it obviously happens at different paces in different places, and it's not just one massive whoosh whirlwind of like, oh, we've changed, we've upgraded our society. How do we balance if suppose all four of you are fathers and you're all having conversations with your next generation and you're teaching them how to sort of operate in society in a different way than you, But then those little boys go to school, and their fathers maybe are not having those same conversations, and they're having still the more destructive ones. They may, if they stand up to and say, my daddy said that you shouldn't talk about this way, or, that da-da-da-da-da, they may encounter once again that cycle, because now they're being told and reflected upon, oh, you're weak, you're a pussy, you're this, you're that. How do we deal with the push-pull between what's happening at an individual level and progress that's being made in the family unit and in the home for the next generation against what's still most likely they're going to encounter in their social environments in school because of different paces of change?
I don't have the answer.
Oh yeah, sorry, no pressure.
But I would say, that's the perpetual challenge, right? Is that we're always trying to push for every parent, on every issue, as you're trying to mold a kid in the way that you think this kid should be against the backdrop of a world that's quite different, and you want to prepare them to change that world, and they also want to navigate that world, and they don't want to be the outcast, and they don't want to be teased, and there's all the things, right? I think part of it is the dialogue, having creating the space for open, constant dialogue. It's the same challenge you have with media, right? And that's what we talk about, critical media literacy. It's not enough to just give your kid information. It's to create space where, as you're watching the show, you say, see that thing that just happened right there? See what they just did there? And by having them see the move and talk through it, they're better prepared to consume it in a more responsible way. Similarly, I have that worry, of course, as they navigate TV without me. I have that same worry when they go into the basketball gym, the locker room, the frat house, the church, the masjid, wherever. All these places are filled with this stuff. But I think if we create the space for dialogue, when they hear that thing, they'll bring it back. And part of the conversation is, what do I do when they say this? Or I heard this, and it almost made sense, but I can't be right because that ain't what you told me. How do I? What's the clap back? And just try to create space for them to be equipped with the tools to navigate those spaces alone, but also to instill in them, which is hard work, a level of confidence that they can kind of stand alone on this thing and be okay and safe with it. And that takes forever. There was a time where I had the bad politics, then there's a time where I got decent politics, then there's a time where I got good politics, but I just keep them to myself. There's a moment where you'd be like, I can't do that. For some of us, that's our 40s. Some of us, it's our 30s. I think as parents, it goes shorten. Yeah.
Is confidence. Man, the only thing that really stuck from my dad was confidence. My dad, I was in school one time, and the kids was talking about Rush Limbaugh. They getting up early, and they watching Rush Limbaugh. And I looked at them, I said, all of you are stupid. You're stupid, and you're being lied to, and my daddy told me that you're being lied to. I was confident enough for the social contagion to not affect me, but that was because, for better or worse, man, he was present. He was there. He was active. He was involved. He was a manicurist. He was a painter, fine point details. How you going to stand? How are you going to be perceived? Not always right, but always engaged. And there are, man, I'm so proud of the brothers that exist now, because there are so many of them that are devoting and dedicating their lives to making young boys feel confident to be who they are. Because that's the only thing that, in a situation like that, even if they just bring it back to you, well, my friends say this. All right, well, let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it. Do you agree with them? Why do you think that was true? Why do you think they're saying that? Not even hey, I'm telling you what's real. No, let's discuss it. How would you feel if that happened to someone that you love? Or how would you feel do you want to be that type of person? And that, as I say something about the black community, is tough, because there's a level of that means you have to trust your child. And you have to trust your child. And maybe not talking when grown folks is talking is not the best elixir for the questions that children might have at all times. So, but I see that changing, and I'm being for real. I really do see that changing as far as the way we communicate with one another.
One thing I want to add to this, I think it's so important, when I talk to parents about this kind of concern of holding that, is I always say it takes a village and a community, right? So one of the most dynamic things we've seen is that, like, taking black boys and putting them in groups where they're like actually collectively unlearning unhealthy masculinity. So guess what? They're not just dependent on you, Dad. They call them up, hey, Marc, something happened today. We've been learning about this unhealthy masculinity stuff. What do you think about that, right? Build a village around the children, right? And find the organizations and the groups who are doing that work to unravel those concepts so that it's being reinforced not just by you as a parent having to hold that, but also there's a community holding it. And that's important. In our circles that we have with Black Masculinity Reimagined, we invite men to bring your uncles, bring your kids, bring your nephews into space. So now they're seeing you struggle with it, and they're like, oh, well, maybe I'm not the only person thinking about this, right? And then like they're meeting other folks who are teenagers who are like also like, oh, I can call him and talk to that about that too. Right, so it's like building a village around them as well. Still being central, of course, but making sure that like you don't feel like it's got to be just only you. When the more people are reinforced with it, that's how social norms change.
Yeah, and bring the bad ones too. Don't give up on the uncles. Well, maybe you could give up on them, but don't continue to challenge them. You didn't, because you was born in 1960 or 1955. That's not a get out of jail free card. No. Well, not abolitionist. That's not a pass to just, you know what I mean? Like, continue the conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Another question?
Hello, my name is Khalik. My question is more so for Yolo because I don't know if Kendis is queer. But my question is, like, what can, because we were talking about also rape culture and, that exists in different spaces. One thing that is, I don't want to sound like I've internalized homophobia because I'm openly gay, but like one of the reasons I avoid gay spaces, regardless of race, is because sexual harassment and hypersexual stuff is very prevalent, I remember like 3 years ago when I was living in California, went to a nightclub and someone grabbed me from behind, when I was getting a drink at the bar, grabbed me from behind and smacked my ass. And I was kind of shocked because I'm like, well, I'm not muscular, I'm not desirable, you know what I'm saying? I grew up very sheltered, so I thought that only happens to women or if it happened to men. They are desirable, like they look like the ones on TV. But what can be done, for in the future for gay spaces, especially for men coming of age in their late teens and 20s, where there's not, that culture of that rape culture that is unfortunately, prevalent, where people feel like, oh, if someone, because we're all liberated and free, whatever, we can all just, have our hands on each other's.
You asking me? So first of all, I think it's on. First of all, sorry that happened to you. Mm-hmm. It's happened to a lot of us, right? This conversation that we've been having is further layered by the nuances of what happens in Black gay men's communities, right? The ways in which many Black gay men I've heard explicitly say, all men always want it, so there's no way the rape can happen here. And it's a further kind of like entrenchment of the patriarchy within our own circles, where we once again believe that Black men's bodies are just hypersexual and the men always want bodies. So you go into a gay club and immediately it's all this kind of attention on you, and that's composed as sexual liberation as opposed to not consent, right? As opposed to rape culture. And I think we have a lot of work to do to have that conversation. I think there's a lot of trauma in our communities, and I think what happens for Black men in general, but for many Black gay men, is that sex becomes the one thing that we get to have, quote unquote. And so there's so much banked on sex. My self-esteem is banked on how much sex I'm having, sex performance. My psychological well-being is all that. And so all that energy gets pushed behind it, and there's sometimes fear of being self-reflexive around those behaviors, right? And so I think we have a lot of work to do in Black queer men's communities, and I think having conversations like this in Black gay male spaces is imperative for us to talk really about consent and talk about bodies and talk about also unlearning that, like, you know, I won't say hyper, I don't like that word, unlearning the ways in which we don't practice and center consent in our spaces.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree, and I'm bi. I do agree in that we have to have that conversation increasingly, because it's expected that if you go into a gay bar that it's okay to touch, to look, to do whatever. And some of my straight friends were telling me just recently, when in San Diego, during Pride Month, he was at the urinal, and there was a guy that his head was so far above his peeing that he could probably, not so close to him peeing, that he could probably get some of the splash from it. And he's like, dude, back up, you know? And it's just increasingly, we feel as if it's normalized for once you enter that space that you're an object. And it's just, we have to have those conversations increasingly.
And there's a lot of nuances to it. There's an article I wrote called Gay Men's Sexism and Women's Bodies, if you ever have a chance to look into it. And it goes back to the same club experience where we're literally partying at a gay club, female friend in the club, gay guy runs up to her, grabs her breasts, and she's like, oh my God, what did you do? He's like, oh, I'm gay, it doesn't matter. Right? So there's layers of patriarchy and sexism we haven't even gotten to the root of or talked about yet. Okay, yes.
I know.
So, thank you for the... We have time for one more? No, we don't. I'm sorry. I apologize. Y'all. So we do it. We good for the questions? The wrap up? Okay. So, am I bringing it up to Ron? Yolo. So, thank y'all so much for this amazing panel. So I'll give it up for everybody as Yolo's going to close this out.
So to close this out, we've opened up a lot of different things, right? And I want to close this out thoughtfully, but I also want to make sure that I name that when we talk about the reimagining Black masculinity, each of you are representations of that. What you are doing and what you are holding is sacred and important and necessary and ancestral in the context of us reimagining what could be possible. And so I want to make sure that we honor that, because that labor can be isolating. It can be hard and difficult. And I just want to make sure, can we just give a round of applause and just name that work that's happening here? At all of our events at Beam, you know, we Southern-based, so we like to do a little call and response affirmation a little bit, right? And it is a consent-based affirmation, so you don't have to call back if you don't want to, all right? But it's a simple way to close out, because when we're in these spaces, sometimes we may move into a place of feeling like we don't have power, and I want to remind everyone that you have the power, that you have the agency, right? And so if you like, you can repeat after me with this closing affirmation. You can put your hand on your heart if you'd like to. Hold that there. And the first line is, my community has the power to heal. We're going to say it one more time. My community has the power to heal. I have the power to heal. Healing is my birthright. And I will make healing and consent and liberation the center of my life. And so it is. Ashe, thank y'all so much.
Listen, thank you all so much. I'm not going to take a long time because we got to move out of this room quickly. But I want to say thank you. First, thank you all to my brothers here. Thank you. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. As we said, the first one was about the adultification of Black girls, and it was lovely. We had it in Philadelphia at the Barnes. I could say a lot. I don't have a lot of time, but I just want to say these are my brothers here. I just met you, but I'm going to go ahead and say you're my brother now. But these are my brothers, and I love them so much. And I just really, I'm gonna start crying if I say anything else, but I love y'all, and they always show up for me, and tonight is no exception. I hope y'all really took something from this night. I want to leave you with the question that we started with. I hope you all walk out of here tonight thinking about the question, what do we owe black children? That's what this series is about. What do we owe black boys? What do we owe black girls? What do we owe our children? The Me Too movement has been talked about for the last 8 years, but when people think about this movement, we really have not talked about children. We talk about everything else but where it started. And it started with children. When I started this work, I started it for children. So as you walk out of here tonight, as you think about the stuff that we talked about this evening, really take that question with you. What do we owe black children, our children? That's the question I would really love for you to hold and think about, marinate on it. This is our community. These are our children. What do we owe black children? Thank y'all so much for coming out tonight. Please, in the foyer, there's snacks, and we always gonna feed you. So please go get some snacks, go get some food, mill around for a little bit. Oh, stay for a second so we can have some pictures.